This is a film about a female ethnographer and her study of young Scottish men's consumer experiences and practices. Instead of showing you these consumption practices directly, our aim is to take a look at the lens that captured these consumers. We want to reverse the camera onto the person that captured data, the person that reflexively grasped the contextualized meanings, and the person that co-created experiences. The film is also about recognizing the multiple perspectives that created the ethnographic understanding. Consumers themselves were found behind cameras as citizen ethnographers, continuously documenting their lives through capturing meaningful consumption experiences. We found that the young men in the study equally generated data that legitimized their practices and authenticized their masculinity to others. Demonstrating and recognizing these multiple perspectives, that we may be in fact one ethnographer amongst a number of others, furthers the overall understanding of meanings of consumer experiences and also creates a basis for sharing the same language with them. There is not one perfect ethnographer or the ideal person that has the correct vantage point. The ethnographer is not all-knowing, all-powerful, and the only person generating data and meaning. We need to become aware that our lens may be one of many in the field and that this can bring us closer together. This then is a film because it's been a film all along. The film is what consumers created for themselves, of themselves. Films were one of the mediated forms through which consumers constructed their identities in capturing their consumption. It was also what the ethnographer used to reflexively make sense of consumers' experiences.
As a female researcher, I was constantly reminded of my biological limitation when it came to studying men. A woman could never be fully accepted in a group of young men. I was reminded by my fellow researchers, some of my initial contacts with informants, and ultimately I also reminded myself. I was the only woman amongst these men trying to play along with them and understanding their rules. I participated in practices I had never done before. I went to places I'd never heard of before, and I talked about things I had no idea of. I had to perform with them, always questioning if I was okay, if I was accepted, or if I was doing something wrong. Although any male ethnographer may have also changed the group dynamic, a man did not have to defend himself for studying men. Beside all these questions and trying to get closer to participating with informants, I had the task of capturing data. I was therefore a natural outsider in two ways. I was a female amongst a group of males, and I also had to take note of observations and keep stock for thick descriptions. In the midst of all these conflicts, I found a toolkit that would impact the study. I started using my mobile phone for recording my own thoughts and observations in breaks during group encounters. With every visit to the bathroom, with every quick phone call in the hall, I took note of what went on, of who was there, where we were, what we did, and how I felt. Not only did I paint a verbal picture that captured the context and the context in which the encounter took place, allowing me to revisit and trigger memory of the encounter, my recordings were also a reflexive note of what I had seen. My mobile phone became a toolkit for reflexive analysis. As my participation with informants progressed, I also found myself more often in situations where I could not leave the setting to record observations. Instead, I also used the mobile phone and started taking notes in the notepad. To everyone in the group, I was inconspicuous as it looked like I was writing a long text message. They thought I was very popular with the amount of messages I wrote. Again, my mobile phone allowed me to capture data unobtrusively and camouflage my role as a researcher. Things then progressed towards taking pictures of informants and activities. I took pictures of pub visits, football games, nightclubs. I also started using my phone for filming highlights of important events in our practices. I also shared my mobile phone listening to the radio on our way to football games. My phone brought us closer together. I captured and valued our shared experiences. I authenticized myself as one of them in creating and valuing mediated tokens of exchange. I valued and captured these photos and films as much as informants did.
This material evidenced their experiences. Their photos and films legitimised their practices and authenticised their masculinity. They became artefacts of a real football fan. They showed them going to pubs and nightclubs, and they had the evidence to show this to others. Photos and films became tokens of social exchange.
So what we saw on the one hand was taking pictures with the phone, and me taking pictures with the phone to be reminded of the mood that went on, and using it as supportive material for the ethnographic description later on. But another thing that came out then later on was to see that informants were taking pictures of similar events and similar meaningful events to them, and that this material kept coming up again and again. So in the end, we actually even exchanged material, and some of the pictures there on some of the events I couldn't take place, where I asked them, so how did things go? How was it? What did you do? They had taken pictures and they could transfer them onto my phone via Bluetooth or infrared, and that I could look at, and where they explained to me, oh, this is what we did and this is what we had. And I found this much more powerful than giving somebody a Polaroid camera or a disposable camera, which so many people do, and saying, take a few pictures, because it seemed so much more natural to them in taking pictures of something meaningful to them, whereas a disposable camera for a researcher is normally something that is not very fluid and natural. The same thing then obviously for taking films. In half the football matches and half the encounters relating to the football matches, you saw mobile phones being used to take films all the time, constantly. And I mentioned to you already one particular film that was filmed by somebody I didn't even know, who put up that film onto YouTube, was found then by an informant who put it up onto their Facebook website, and then that's the way I found it. I was his friend on Facebook and saw that he had added a film where I was. And I mean, some of this really involved data sharing in the end, and actually being one to produce material as well for them. That was co-creating, and that was something that was not just meaningful to me, and where I could see it was also meaningful to them, and where I could see, okay, we have a parallel here, we're actually speaking the same language. Obviously for me then as the ethnographer, the challenge was to find the underlying meaning. What is so meaningful about this particular encounter, and what is so meaningful? But the wealth of information and data that is being created with mobile phones and actually published and available for everyone as a trophy, as something to see, as a proof, as a link, I was there, look at me. That is so powerful, and that is just such a thing that makes it such a situated and device that is there, and to capture the social life as it is on a daily basis.
The various applications of the mobile phone help the ethnographer in capturing and generating rich data in the field. We think that this may be of help for future ethnographers working in similar contexts. Further to this, we feel that the mobile phone in particular supports the more naturalistic, fluid interaction with informants, where other devices such as disposable cameras may heighten consumers' consciousness of their consumer behaviour. The use of the mobile phone in this study allowed the ethnographer to capture consumers in their experiences as they were lived. The ubiquitous nature of a mobile phone allowed both informants and ethnographer to stay true to their natural behaviour. But we also found that consumers themselves collected data. This data was equally natural and without groups and individuals being consciously aware that the lens was turned on them. Consumers were used to turning this lens onto themselves. They documented their own experiences as consumers and through this constructed their identities. They allowed us to gain insight into important events, practices and experiences in their lives and helped us in creating ethnographic understanding.